the Sisterhood of the Bottomless Mimosa. Well, hello there, friends. Welcome back to Mimosa Sisterhood. This is your host, Melissa, and you are back listening to the #1 podcast in the world that celebrates women's voices and stories, past and present. I actually just gave myself that ranking. There's no factual evidence in me being #1, but let's be real. I'm #1 in my heart, and I'm #1 in your ear holes. So today we have another Everyday Woman themed episode where we get to sit down and chat with a real life human being who is kicking ass and taking names today in the world. And today we have Chloe Owens on the podcast. And I'm so excited about this, guys, because she was actually recommended by one of our audience members, which is the core of Mimosa Sisterhood. Looking around at the women in your life and thinking, damn, this bitch rocks. I'm going to recommend that she is featured on one of my favorite podcasts because her story is amazing and what she's doing is amazing. And I want her to share all of her magical words and wisdom with other women in the world. I mean, I'm sorry, guys, but that's rad as fuck. So Chloe is a visual storyteller based out of St. Louis, Missouri, and she has such an interesting background, skill set, passion. She's been able to take that technical experience in social work and implement it in a world that is far more aligned with her soul's purpose, the arts, film, photography, documentaries, and is doing social work through these unconventional outlets. So she's doing what she went to school for, but in her own way. And I really love that. And to be honest, I very much relate to that because I went to school and I majored in sociology. I wanted to go and get my master's. I wanted to get a PhD. I wanted to become the social researcher. I've done none of those things. Fast forward 10 years later, I now have a podcast that celebrates and amplifies women, which kind of is sociology, right? So it's very funny because we actually talk about this quite a bit in our podcast episode. This concept of always knowing in your core who you are, what you love, what you're passionate about, the things that inspire you, that fuel your fire, and sticking to those. Because if you don't, you're going to go through this big whirlwind of an adventure that just does a really sharp U-turn and brings you right back to the core. So that's life, that's just life. So Chloe and I have an amazing conversation in today's podcast episode. We talk about so many important current event matters, so many of her projects that she's either done in the past or is doing or on the horizon. And she's just really contributing in such an incredible way. And I cannot wait for you to hear all about it. But before we get started, just a couple quick reminders. Please be sure that you're subscribed to Mimosa Sisterhood on Apple Podcasts. It's the best way to stay in the loop when new episodes release because they will appear direct to your phone the moment that they drop. We also have a kick-ass bi-monthly newsletter. Yes, that's right. It used to be once a month, but this month I am making it 2 newsletters a month only because I'm breaking it in half and making it shorter. Nobody wants to read a novel when they wake up at 8 a.m. on a Thursday. So I'm going to shorten it down, break it up into 2 separate newsletters, and to make your lives a little bit easier when that email hits your inbox, but you haven't even had that first cup of coffee yet. So if you are interested in signing up for my kick-ass newsletter, which includes so much cool shit like women's history articles, female fun facts, featured female artists. You can do that on my website, www.mimosasisterhood.com, and you can subscribe on the front page. And even better, If you go to my Instagram page, Mimosa Sisterhood, and click the link in my bio, you will see a really cool option called free postcard. And if you sign up to the newsletter through that link, you will not only get my incredible newsletter sent to you twice a month, but you will also get a free postcard sent to you by me in the mail. And it may or may not include a couple extra goodies. So yeah, lots of cool shit out there for you to take advantage of. You should get on it. Okay, well, let's get into the podcast. It's time, guys. Without further ado, grab your enormous bottle of wine, because we're partying on tonight's episode, and meet Chloe Owens. Chloe, thank you so much for joining Mimosa Sisterhood podcast. I'm so happy you're here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Great to be here, on a podcast.
Yes. It's just a regular Wednesday afternoon in my life.
Exactly. Just here, wine. I'm telling you, I was watching a Law & Order SVU marathon before this, so totally normal day.
Amazing. I love it. Well, I don't know if you know this. Maybe you do. I think I actually already told you. But you are the first person to ever be nominated to be a everyday woman on the show.
What? No, I didn't know that.
I didn't tell you that?
What? No.
Oh, maybe I missed that in my initial intro when I reached out to you.
Man.
Yes. So a long time ago, I, on Instagram, did an Instagram story, threw out those questions. Is there anybody that you know in your life that you think would be an awesome person for me to talk to and chat with on my Everyday Woman series? And you were one of the people that was recommended. And now here we are.
That's too funny. That's too funny.
So cool. So we have a common friend, Taryn Moore.
Taryn. Oh, how do you know Taryn?
We went to college together. We were both sociology majors at SF State.
Nice. I met Taryn when I lived up in Boston and did City Year. I don't remember when I met Taryn up there. That whole time is a blur for good reasons that don't have to do with alcohol, but with AmeriCorps and helping children. But Taryn is wonderful people.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. She was one of my handful of friends when I was in college. I only had enough to count on one hand.
It's all you need. It's all
Right.
you need. The other hand is for wine. And so you were good.
Absolutely. But yeah, shout out to Taryn. I know you're listening. I love you, girl. Thank you for being
Taryn.
here for years. You're the best.
Wonderful.
Well, cool. Well, so we're going to dive into why you're here, why Taryn recommended you to be on the show in just a minute. But let's get to the most important stuff, the vino.
Vino. There's a saying, water is life. And I think wine is water, and therefore wine is life. So when you say yeah, we can drink on here, I'm like, great, let's pour it up. I'm ready. Let's do this.
Yeah. It's just get the blood flowing,
Exactly. I feel so I didn't have too many options tonight though. My wine stock is low, but
all good.
I've got this wine. It's called Paso. It's a Spanish Tempranillo. Spanish red wines, I think, are the best red wines. It just is what it is. They just know how to do it. They know how to do it. They know what they're doing. Oh, God, I could go to Spain right now with this glass of wine.
I don't know if I've ever had a Spanish wine. Is it similar to is it just red wine, or is there a particular varietal to it?
So those are all great questions. I don't know.
No worries. I am no wine expert. We've literally had Coors Light reviewed on this podcast before, so we're okay.
Listen, all I know is this, a Tempranillo is pretty popular type of Spanish wine. The other one that is probably my most favorite is I hope I'm saying this right on a podcast, LOL, is a Grenache. Oh, those are so good. I can't describe it for you. All I can do is find a good one, whatever that means, and try it. And it's the bomb. It's so
Perfect.
good.
Adding these
So
to the
good.
list.
Yes.
So cool.
Okay, well, what you drinking?
Nothing that exciting either. I actually had to run to the corner store to get a couple avocados for dinner. And I was like, oh, I'm going to browse the wine section. And me being me, I always go for the most affordable bottle I can find. And it popped into my eye because I'd never seen this bottle before. And then I noticed that it claims it only has 1 gram of sugar. And I'm like, that is so interesting because I thought wine was like all sugar. How are you having only 1 gram? What is this blasphemy? So I'm like, I want to see what it tastes like in case it's like shit, like everything like diet, it sucks.
It's
so I'm
horrible.
Like, let's see how bad this can be. It tastes no different than any other bottle of Sauvignon Blanc I've ever had.
What?
So this is called Liquid Light. It's a Sauvignon Blanc. It says it's vibrant, crisp, and refreshing. It has some interesting looking pebble next to it.
Look at that. Look at the little rainbow. Oh, it's a rainbow like for Pride.
Right? I was thinking that too. It's
totally
June
themed.
2nd. We're kicking off Pride. And this 1 gram of sugar wine is actually bomb. So I don't know if it's like benefiting my health any more than a different grammed sugar wine. But it's not bad. So if anybody out there likes wine but hates how sugary they are, try the Sauvignon Blanc Liquid Light. It's really good.
1 gram. I need to know how they pulled that off. I feel like now I don't know anything about wine anymore. I'm like, fermentation, doesn't alcohol is sugar? I'm confused. I don't know.
Who knows? If it tastes good, I got a good buzz going, the label's cute, those are my requirements.
That's really all that matters. Those are the key elements. Right? Does it taste good? Is it cute? Am I buzzed?
Yep.
Here we are.
So super cool, super fun. Yay. Oh, and the best part, it was a whopping $7.99. So happy about it.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yup. So cool. So yeah, let's do a nice little cheers, one last sip, and we will be diving in.
Here we go. Oh,
bomb.
So good.
So good. Okay, cool. So the reason why Taryn recommended you for this podcast was specifically due to your most recent project, or what I think is your most recent project, but you'll be the one to tell me that, which is the Window Quote Project. And I want to talk a lot about this, but I was thinking, you can just tell us a little bit about yourself, where you come from, where you live, what you're doing, and, kind of just like the path of your life that led you to the year in which you started this new project.
Yeah. Oh man, I love the whole where did you who are you? And up until I'm glad now we're doing this, because up until recently I swear I didn't have any type of answer. I'd be like, I'm me. LOL,
yeah, right?
What do you want? But I have to start off everything by saying I am born and raised Memphis, Tennessee, 901 forever. I don't like Tennessee, but Memphis is a wonderful, beautiful place. Also, #1 in the United States for barbecue. I will die on that hill every day of the week for the rest of my life. So, originally born and raised in Memphis, but currently right now I am in St. Louis, Missouri. I work right now as a story bank manager for a health-focused organizing and advocacy nonprofit. We do a lot to make sure that everyone has health care, and in a state like Missouri, that's really hard.
Oh man.
But you know what? We don't have to get into that. We don't have to get into that because we're going to put that to the side, because that's a whole podcast. Perfect. But, I love the element of it that I do, which is really, it's just storytelling. Everything that we do and all of the work that needs to get done to change things, part of doing that work to make it happen is to tell people stories. And that's what I get to do every day. And I love it. And sometimes when I look at how I got here, I'm like, there was just nothing. I tried to avoid this path at every opportunity that I had. Like, I really didn't think I was gonna, like, how am I even doing this right now? Like, when I was in school, I initially applied for college thinking I was going to be a physical therapist. It was the compromise between, like, my mom wanted me to be like a doctor or some fancy surgeon that, like, you know, doesn't have to work except for like 3 operations a year because they're so fancy. I don't want to do all that. So I was like, this is a compromise. Like, I'll still be a doctor. Cool. Mm-hmm. And I applied to Saint Louis University because they have one of the best PT programs in the country. And we came up here my senior year of high school for a scholarship interview weekend. And so during that weekend, they have you like tour the campus. You get to like explore, you know, what your major is going to be, you know, explore that college that it'll be housed in. And so we get over to the health sciences college and we're walking around and I'm seeing like all of these labs and these smart college students doing all of this health science stuff. I looked at my mom and I was like, this is so cool. For anyone but me, I don't want to do this. Like, I do not want to be a physical therapist. Luckily, no one heard me say that because they gave me a scholarship and let me into the school.
Oh, shit. So you were only going to be able to get a scholarship for that particular program.
Well, I definitely wrote my entire essay regarding how I wanted to be a physical therapist, which was true. It just changed. Mm-hmm. So... again, luckily, no one heard me say that, and I played it off the entire time. I got the scholarship. I got into the school, and a week before I got to school, I called them, and I was like, I'm changing my major. I don't want to do physical therapy. So
were they like, what do you mean? Like,
luckily, they were just like, that's fine, cool. And I was like, oh, thank God.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah, so I got to school and eventually kind of found social work at this weird point of I got to the school, I didn't really like it. I thought there was way too many white folks. I was like, I don't know where the black people are, but I can't find them.
God.
I was in my classes. At that point I had switched to psychology and I was like, this is okay, but something's missing. I was just all over the place. And I was in my dorm hall my freshman year, maybe into first semester. And this girl who lived on my floor, I didn't really know her, but she heard me complaining about everything in the hallway. She like opens her door, creeps her head out, and is like, hey, it sounds like you should go talk to this woman named Sabrina Tayus in the social work department because I think after hearing all that you said, you should be a social worker. And then
was she like this like beam of an angel that just like made way into your life and like spit major knowledge and everything just changed?
That's a much better way to describe it because I think about it in like scary movie terms. Like it was some like, you know, like that chick from The Ring with the center part. And she just like, she creeped out and she was like, let me drop some advice on you before I potentially murder you. But I'm going to go back into the room and it's going to be fine. So crazy enough, though, she was right. I went and I spoke with that woman that she recommended. And I changed my major that day.
Wow.
And I never switched back. Like finding the major of social work it put words to everything that I like knew I wanted to do that I couldn't figure out how to verbalize. And so while to this day, I will always say that what I do is social work, I definitely don't do it in a very traditional sense. And what I thought I was going to end up doing, nothing of what I'm doing now is what I thought. And my idea of like, I'm going to be a social worker was, I'm going to end up working in a school, supporting students, working against like the school to prison pipeline, like different things like that. But I got the opportunity to kind of start that and realized, wow, schools are really, wait, can I swear on here?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, thank God. I was like, let me not drop F-bombs if that's not cool.
No, we're R. We're rated R.
Excellent. But no, I got into these schools and I was like, damn, schools are really fucked up. And there's only so much you can actually do about it. And there's only so many things you can do to help your students while you are working and doing direct service in a school, which sounds crazy, right? Because you're literally like, you're right there with your students. You walk in every day. They're like, hey, Miss C, what's up? Like you have that relationship, you have that proximity, and yet your hands are so tied. And I mean, it was from there I even started getting into advocacy and organizing and things like that. But then once I got into that, I realized I got so far away from the people that I love to work with. I got so far away from working with students on the ground, with their families, with community members. I was in these spaces with like researchers and folks from think tanks and big names and policymakers, and I was like, man, if my students heard the shit that y'all say about we're going to reform education in X, Y, and Z way, they would look at y'all like you stupid, because you are. Like, you're so out of touch. And so I was just constantly trying to figure out, okay, how do I help amplify the voices of like my students, like their parents, like the folks that they live in the neighborhood with, to be in those rooms where decisions are constantly being made. Because it's, I mean, that's the thing, right? Like those rooms aren't really going anywhere right now. And so how do we make sure our folks are always there? And that's how I kind of fell into storytelling. And it just, I mean, the first time I got to do any type of a storytelling project, that's a lie. The first time I didn't realize what I was doing. But the first time I got into it and I realized what I was doing, I was like, oh, this is perfect. Like, this is absolutely how I want to do social work. Because when you're working with people, you're doing work on the ground, you're talking with them about their stories and figuring out the best ways to amplify that and put that in front of folks. It's beautiful. And then going from that and working with those very folks whose stories you're helping to uplift, to figure out, great, now how do we get change from this? That's beauty right there. So
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. So that was a lot of long-winded stuff that may not have even answered your question.
No, it was all amazing. I have like one question, a couple initial thoughts, like in regards to the students that you're referring to. What like age group are we talking?
Oh man, my sweet spot is definitely teenagers.
Okay.
I love high school students. Everyone is like, teenagers, hormones, they're horrible and angry. And I'm like, bruh, they need a nap, first off. Okay. They just need a nap. Second off, I mean, like, at least they can communicate, and like, sure, they're going to cuss me out, but like, it is what it is. And when I come right back with that fire, they're going to be like, dang, you said that to me, Miss C? I'll be like, yeah, you said that to me. Mm-hmm. And then we good.
Yeah.
So I spent a ton of time working with mostly high school students. Did spend a little time working with middle school and elementary school, and I love them all, right? That's not my sweet spot though. Mm-hmm. It's my heart is where the teenagers are.
Mm-hmm. So cool. So I feel like, I mean, and I don't have a ton of friends or know people that are in social work, but I feel like I've never heard of social work described as a form of like storytelling.
Yeah.
And I love that idea and that concept, because that is kind of like really what it is, especially when you're working like one-on-one with people or communities of people who really are using you as a resource for either support or getting help or assistance or guidance, you have to know the story behind the person, the issue, the community, the movement. Exactly. And then you have to take it and do something with it.
Exactly. It is so integral to what social work is at its core. You know, what I love about the profession is that we have like this code of ethics that we're held to. And one of the things that I love about it is you're always pushed, no matter what level of work that you do, whether you do direct service, whether you're doing work that's kind of more meso level, like groups and things like that, or whether you're doing big macro level work like with, you know, communities, with states, with governments, you always should be looking at the other levels of like, how does this impact in those ways? And how am I making sure that I do something more than like what I do with my 9 to 5? Mm-hmm. So, you know, when I was thinking about doing direct service, it's not just like, how am I working with individuals, but how am I also working to impact systems that impact the individuals that I work with? Because the goal should always be, if we are supporting people who are, you know, marginalized, oppressed, who are pushed out, cast out, ignored, like, how do we work ourselves out of a job so that like we don't have to do that anymore? Which, you know, is a lofty thing, right? Like, how many of us are really going to work ourselves out of jobs? But how many of us are even trying to do that?
Yeah, that's the heavy question there.
Exactly.
Wow.
I'm
gonna like sit with that thought for a while.
Let it marinate. God. Marination takes at minimum 2 hours. So.
Yeah, I realized that I wasn't done thinking about it. I'm like, okay, we're gonna have to log this for later once the podcast is over and the wine is more than half gone.
Exactly. Right. Wine helps. Great part of marinating.
Oh my God. So very interesting. Now, I know that in addition to social work, you have so many other things that you do that are not social work at all, but like basically use your social work experience and interests and passions and like combine them as one.
Yeah,
so
pretty much.
You're a photographer, you make documentaries, you're into film. Tell me all about that. And I guess my one initial question is like, what came first, chicken or the egg? Like, was the photography and the film sort of something that built off of your initial career plan in social work? And you're using it as a way to just like expand on that?
Film was a complete accident. Like, so the first film that I made, which it's funny, if I go back now and watch it, like I cringe. I think about all the things I could have done differently because I didn't know what I was doing.
Oh, yeah. Don't listen to the first 20 episodes of this podcast.
Right? You understand.
Oh my God. It like pains my soul. The person that like finds a new podcast and like, let's start at episode 1 that was produced 4 years ago. And you're like, please, like, dear Lord, don't do it.
It's like, please start at least sometime in this year. Right. Just forget everything else before that. But my first documentary, I was a senior in college. And I promise you, the reason that this thing came to be, I had an honors capstone that I had to complete, and I just didn't want to write a paper. Simple as that. Like, I refused. I just didn't want to write a paper. And so I was like, oh, you know, there's these last, like, at that point, 3 years, there's been so much going on with Black students on campus. I'm going to make a video. I was just like, I'm going to make a video and it's going to be about what it's like to be Black at SLU. So, oh boy. It was the summer of 2014. And I had spent the entire summer doing all of this research about Black students who go to predominantly white institutions, blah, 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 this and that. You know, preparing like, who do I want to talk to? Who am I going to want to interview? I get done with my the research phase, and I'm kind of like at this point ready to go. I've reached out to folks. They know what's up. They know that I'm going to contact them about being interviewed. School is about to start, and August 9th happens, and Mike Brown is murdered in Ferguson, Missouri, and I'm at school in St. Louis, Missouri. And it completely, I mean, it changed everything. Anybody who was in St. Louis at that time can tell you it changed everything, and it has to this day. And it's it's actually pathetic when you watch that documentary. You kind of have no idea that was happening. But what I know is that it changed every single interview that I conducted during that time. It changed everything that everyone said. And I remember I got done with all these interviews, and I was putting the film together, or I was kind of like looking back through them, and I was like, I went to my advisor. I was like, I'm not going to have any, like, this isn't going to be what if I don't even have a minute of content? Like, I don't think I can get you a full minute. Like, none of this shit is making sense. None of it's coherent. None of it fits together. And she was like, if you have less than a minute of content, you have less than a minute of content. And then I came back to her like 2.5, maybe 3 weeks later, and I had 50 minutes.
Oh, shit.
And I sat down. I was freaking out. I was like, fuck. Like, I don't really know if like I did any of this right. But like when I went back through all the transcripts, like I just put all these things together. This seemed to make sense. And she sat down and watched it, and she looked at me and she was like, this is great. I was like, so really? Cool. I was like, I'm pretty sure she lying to me. But, I was like, I mean, cool. You think it's cool, whatever. And so I took it, I showed it to some more people, and they were like, bruh, this is important right now. Like, what are you going to do with this? And at that point, I was like, well, I'll, publish it I'll put it on YouTube, and I'll send it around to like different faculty at the school. And at that time, we had just gotten a new president of the university. And so me being like, he seems to check his emails from regular ass students, I'm going to send the president an email. So I sent it around, and then I did a couple of talks on it like the following year, because I had a couple of professors use it in their class. But when I went back and like I really let it marinate, like what I had done, I was like, oh, that's fucking social work.
Yeah, right?
Like, that's absolutely, like, there was a problem that needed to be amplified. It needed to be fleshed out and talked about. I put this thing together, and then it was like, all right, how do we use this to do something about it? And to be fair, there was a lot more that could have happened from it, and that's fine, because I didn't know what I was doing. But I was like, oh yeah, I could do this. I could do that every day. Mm-hmm. And before I had applied to my MSW program, because I ended up getting a master's in social work, there was a brief period of time where I was like, maybe I'll go to film school. Then imposter syndrome totally took over, and I was like, no, I can't do that. But as I kept doing the social work stuff, like, I just kept thinking about that. I kept thinking about that film, and I kept figuring out how to do more opportunities like that. No matter where I was carving out like, well, how can I do projects that were like that? Mm-hmm. And that that really led to being able to develop any kind of film and video expertise, and the photography as well, because at that point I got into that. I think it was my last semester of grad school. And I finally realized that I had decided to get a master's in social work, and I wasn't going to be a social worker. Mm-hmm. And I had spent 3 semesters playing social worker, and I was like, oh my God, I don't want to do this. And I called my grad advisor and had a mini breakdown of like, hey, no big deal. We've been planning for 3 semesters now that I'm going to do some policy and advocacy job and maybe like work in government or for an elected official. And I don't want to do any of that anymore, and I have a semester left.
What now? How do we rewind?
I was like, I'm pretty sure I want to do this thing called storytelling. Can you help me? And amazingly, she was able to help me. She connected me with this woman named Lindy Drew, who started Humans of St. Louis. And it's actually the second largest Humans of page, only behind Humans of New York. And Lindy is the person who taught me how to photograph. She really helped me hone in my storytelling skills and ability. And I mean, from that, I was just like, oh yeah, I'm doing this every day. We literally would go outside and talk to strangers and take their pictures and record their stories. Like, let's go.
Yeah, so cool. That's awesome. I do have a couple quick questions before we get too far. So the documentary that you did in college, it was called the Black Experience?
Yeah, the Black Experience at Saint Louis University.
Yeah.
Not at all related to what it's about, though.
Okay. Well, I was wondering, what my question was going to be was, like, what are some of the, like, highlight key points that you can recall that maybe came up often in that documentary? Like, were there maybe a handful of things that you maybe heard more than once from multiple people that you interviewed?
Yeah, that's a great question, because what I found is that there were two really, like, specific experiences. There was kind of I would call it like a Black out-of-body experience that's looking around at trying to fit into this really white space and going, like, just finding it extremely difficult to be able to do and reconcile being there with, like, who that person was. And the other being, like, completely and utterly assimilated. Like, Blackness to a point is gone. Like, they've just so heavily assimilated into whiteness, actually, is really what it is. And so what I tried to do when I set it up in the editing was really, like, juxtapose those two things, because really every Black person has a very different experience when they go there. But those are really going to be the two themes. You have folks who are going to be there and they're just like, this is what we're doing. This is what I've always done. Like, it's not even a matter of code switching. It's like just merging into that 100% all the time. And the folks who are, like, hitting brick walls trying to get through it every day. And it was fascinating. It really was fascinating to sit down and talk with folks about that. But one thing that came up with everyone was, you know, things did need to change. There were things that the university was doing that things needed to change and be different. And it's funny to this day, if you go to the video on YouTube, every now and again I still get emails that someone has commented on the video. I think one of the most recent ones was at least last year, talking about, like, thanks for making this was really important. And that's crazy to me, because that thing came out in 2015. Like, it's 2021 now. If anyone still finds that relevant, there's a problem. Oh, yeah. And the unfortunate thing is, like, I know that there are people who still find that relevant.
You know what I was thinking about that would be so cool, because you had mentioned, like, I don't know what I'm going to do with this. You know, I made it and it's just here. It would be so cool, though, if you did the exact same project, like, 10 years later. Same campus, same theme, got interviews, got answers, and then saw, like, are they exactly the same? Has it gotten worse? Like, have we made improvement? What are people thinking 10 years later? Especially with how in the past year, you know, Black Lives Matter was more than ever on just, like, the forefront of the world.
Yeah.
And I mean, it doesn't actually really surprise me, though, that people have found your video again, because I have no doubt so many people are looking for resources like that to feel less alone in what had been such a horrific year of complete and utter darkness. And so like even something that you made in 2015, which really began during an experience in Missouri in which somebody was killed, is still relevant for people that have now are again needing that same thing in a year where people have been killed.
Yeah. It's funny. I feel like you've been in my Google Drive because I've definitely thought about doing a follow-up.
Really?
I'm just like, because at one point I came back, when I came back to Missouri, it was 5 years, and I was like, I've got a camera. I could make it happen. Just go on campus, meet a few folks, talk and see how things are going. Because none of the folks who are featured in the first film are there anymore, including, I'm pretty sure, every single faculty and or staff person.
Oh, so you were not just interviewing students. You were also interviewing staff. Okay. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Wow, interesting.
I'm pretty sure I've tried to keep up with a lot of them over the years. They've all left.
Yeah.
And so it would be fascinating to do like a round 2 with what would have to be completely new people to potentially get what might be the same result. Mm-hmm. Though a better film, because I know what I'm doing now.
Well, tell us about the window quote project, because I know that's something you, I believe, started, was it last year?
I did. I started it last year in, oh my gosh, it was May of last year. So it's officially been just over a year. And it started right after George Floyd's murder. So obviously COVID-19 was alive and well. The pandemic was in full swing. Quarantine was a thing. There was just so much happening, right? There was just so much happening, not only with the pandemic and needing to be home and trying to like figure out, all right, what does like life look like now? I don't think I realized just how much transition that was until now. But then every other day you're getting on social media, you're turning on the news, and like Black people are just dying. It became like, it was just too much. It was just too much. Not that any other time it wasn't, but it was way too much this time. And I felt, on the one hand, trapped in my apartment, but also on the other hand, like I wanted to get out, but I also didn't feel really safe to really leave, on a lot of levels, health-wise, hell, just Black people dying everywhere wise. And so I was on the phone with a couple of family members, and we were talking about everything, and somebody said, you know, hey, have you seen this LeVar Burton tweet today? And LeVar Burton is the guy, some people know him from Star Trek. Personally, I know him from Reading Rainbow. And I was like, the Reading Rainbow guy? And they were like, yeah. And I was like, what does the tweet say? And it was like, don't fuck with me today, white people. Today is not the day. And I was like, damn, LeVar Burton said fuck on the internet? But I was also like, yo, I feel this. Like, that's absolutely how I feel. And I think it was my cousin, I was like, man, I want to put that on a dry erase board and just like put it in my window so everyone outside knows that that's how I feel. And then I found a dry erase board, and the next day I wrote it on a dry erase board and I put it on my window. And at first, you know, it was just kind of this like slick, funny thing. I think I deflect a lot of things with humor, and so on the one hand, it was a way of being funny, but it really was like, that's absolutely how I felt. Mm-hmm. And I felt like I didn't have any other outlets to say how I was feeling. And so it just became really a practice that I did almost every day to find the words that so many other Black people have said and put them in my window, because it was like, this is how I'm feeling too. And it was nice to know that other people were feeling like that. Mm-hmm. It did turn into really a thing that was just, for a good little minute there, it was really me yelling at white people because I live in a pretty white as hell neighborhood here in St. Louis. And I was just sick of it. I was sick of, like, white people were pissing me the hell off, and I just couldn't take it. Like, oh, now y'all want to wake up? Now everybody wants to go protest and care and pretend? I'm just like, I don't have time for your fucking awakening, whites. Okay? Mm-hmm. I'm so pissed. But eventually, yelling at white people, as it always does, it gets tiring. And I was like, I don't want to cater to white people even if I'm yelling at them. And so then it became, when I stopped doing that, it just became a thing that was like, how am I talking to Black people again? How am I being with, like, this is how I'm feeling, and I wonder if y'all are feeling like this too, and putting that out there. So that's really the project.
What I really like about it is, like, especially being that it was born in the middle of a literal pandemic where we were inside our homes, afraid to leave, to be around other people, thinking we're all gonna die, thinking we're gonna kill our grandmas without even knowing it, like, all this fear. And, like, it almost has this, like, apocalyptic messaging of, like, I'm trapped in my house and this is the only way I can communicate to the outside world.
Yes.
Which, like, the year was fucked beyond belief. Like,
completely
everything
fucked.
Was going wrong. And, like, not even just externally, socially in the world, like, in our own selves, in our own mental health, in our own relationships with our loved ones, our families, our romantic relationships, our friends, our employers. Everything was fucked. And, like, I, like, feel like it's like it was this apocalyptic world where we're all just peering out of the blinds, and who are we gonna see? Are we gonna see anybody? Is it a bird? What is it? A plane? Like, how do I communicate to the world what I'm going through?
Yeah.
You know, in addition to this, like, crisis that's happening with Black people being killed, there are so many other crises, and I feel like the project is just, like, a perfect visual explanation of just all the crazy that was happening.
I mean, it kind of, you know, it could be the pandemic or it could be the purge outside. But, like, either way, I can probably get my dry erase board and put a fucking quote on there.
Right?
And just be like, this shit is not okay.
No, help us.
And put it in my window. And someone is going to see that shit and be like, yeah.
Yeah. Has anybody out in the streets, like, ever responded?
Yeah. So, oh man, it's hilarious. Like, this is my office, and so the board is in my office window, which faces out to the street. And I always have these blinds open. I love to let the light in. And so I'll be sitting here on my laptop, and I've put the quote up, and I love watching people walk by, because some people will stop. And most of the time, I can see them, but they can't see me. And my favorite reaction, there was this older white woman, and she was, like, walking past. She was probably, like, doing a little, like, midday power walk or something. And she stops. She reads the board. I have no idea what quote was up that day. I wish I did. And she scoffs. Like, she's pissed. She's like, oh. And I just, like, see her face, and then she, like, storms off even faster than how she approached. And I was like, it's working. Cool.
Right. Right.
And amazingly, though, this is, like, it's in, like, basically the front yard. Only one person has ever caught me putting up the board and, like, going outside to take the picture of it. Only one person has caught me doing this in person, and he was like, oh my God, are you the person who puts up the quotes? And I was like, yes. And was walking his little dog, and he was just like, I just want to thank you so much, because every day when I take my dog on our walk, like, I love coming and seeing these quotes from influential Black folks. So thank you so much for what you're doing.
So
and
cool.
I was like, oh, that's so nice.
That is really nice.
But nothing
so
is
cool.
better than the woman scoffing. Nothing is better than that.
I wish that you knew what quote was out there. It had to have been, it really hit her, that's for sure.
She was not happy about it. I've never seen her again.
She's made a point to never walk down your street again.
She changed her route. She was like, I'm not dealing with this fuckery. I was like, okay, ma'am.
Oh my God.
Still here, though.
It's super cool. So do you have any like other projects on the horizon, things you're working up, things you're in progress, like what's coming in the future that we can keep our eyes out for?
Yeah. So for the month of March, I did it was a part of the Window Quote project, but it focused on amplifying the stories of Black women who have been murdered by the police. And that was I loved doing that. And it was just sad every day. Like, every day I got up and I figured out, like, all right, who's the woman who I'm posting their name today, and what happened to them, and what was their story? And I made sure to do it that every day so that I could be active in that practice. And by the time I got to the end of the month, I thought, man, first off, Black women, like, we're really dope. Clearly. I knew that before. But I wanted to do something that really centered Black women's stories. And so what I'm working on now, I want to start like a storytelling project specific for Black women. And not on this tip of like, oh my God, like, Black women are so excellent, we're saving the world and we're always right and we know all the things. Because let's get real, that shit is pressure. Like, I don't have time for all that. That's a lot. And, you know, it's wonderful that the mainstream has kind of switched from this narrative of like, Black women are so angry, Black women are so bitter, Black women are, you know, whores who mooch off the government and X, Y, and Z other things. But what people don't realize is on the other side, Black women are strong. Black women are superheroes. Black women are magical. Black women can do no wrong. Black women are saviors. All of that shit is extremes. Mm-hmm. Like, what about like Black women are people? What about like Black women do shit and they're like, I'm embarrassed as fuck about that. What about like, you know, like Black women being like, actually, I do want to sit in my sweatpants. What about Black women just like, you know, just being, just being. And so this next project, which I have no idea when it will really become a thing. It's still in its preliminary phases. But it will focus on just, it's almost like a humans of, but specifically for Black women. Mm-hmm. And I think it'll be really cool. It'll incorporate some like docu-style videos, and also some portrait photography. I found an old Polaroid, so I'm hoping to incorporate some of that into it. But that will be the next thing for sure. Still got the Window Quote project going, but that is where my energy is, and something I'm super, super excited about.
So cool. So how can we like find out when it's live and in action?
Yeah, that is a great question. More than likely, like, folks, if they're the only social media I truly engage in is Instagram, because everybody yells at each other on Facebook, and Twitter, right, as funny as it is, can be super depressing. And they're like, just follow the funny stuff. And I'm like, I can't be on Twitter and not find out about all the political shit, and then I'm sad, and then I'm angry, and then I delete my Twitter because I've deleted 7 Twitter accounts. Oh man. So folks will know if they're following me on Instagram, I'll do a launch on there. And then it will have its own like separate account So I'll probably
Cool.
get people like hyped up for that release on my personal page. But right now, the biggest thing is going to be finding folks who are interested in being interviewed and having their stories documented and their pictures taken for the project. So if anybody knows anybody, send them my way.
Hell yeah. And keep me in the loop on all of this so that I can keep everybody else in the loop as well.
Of course. Of course.
Cool. Well, I usually always do just like a last little advice section, and I already told you whatever advice you have, whether that is navigating what career path, what major you want to do, figuring out your passion project. How do I get into film and photography? Like, I want to be an advocate. I want to make change. Where do I start? Like, whatever is calling to you in the advice realm, throw it at us.
Yeah, I'm so glad. So I thought on this one because I was like, shit, I probably don't have any good advice. But then I thought about, all right, what would I go back and tell me?
Mm-hmm.
And it would be, they're going to tell you no. Do that shit anyway. Because albeit I'm proud of the path that I've taken to get to where I am now and know that I needed all of that to get to where I'm going. There was some shit that I knew about myself that I could have held on to that, and I should have trusted myself because I knew, but I let other people say like, no, don't do that. Don't pursue that. Like, be smarter. Like, think about this. And I knew, I've always wanted to do things that are creative. I have always I'm the girl, I have been singing and dancing and painting and drawing and just doing all sorts of stuff like that since I could basically fucking breathe.
Mm-hmm.
And so to let anybody, including people who are the most important to me, tell me all right, but be smarter about this. Maybe you can do that on the side. Mm-hmm. No, I can do that shit full time because I'm excellent. I'm excellent at what I do. And this is what I was put here for. And so, to anybody out there, there are going to be people who tell you no, but fuck that, because you, trust you. And that's so hard. So I hope that folks hear that and know that that's I hope they give themselves the permission to do that, because I didn't give myself the permission to do that sooner, and I wish I had.
Me too. You couldn't have nailed that further on the head in my entire life. The things that I was passionate about, loved, dreamed of being when I was in 7th grade, 8th grade, had all this emotion around it and passion and drive and excitement. I was told not to do any of those things. So I didn't. So I've just been dicking around, wasting time for fucking 15 years. And now I'm having to pick it all up at 31 years old. Oh, let me get this podcast together. Could have been doing this shit 10 years ago.
Could have been doing this shit. Could have been doing this shit. Damn it.
So annoying. It's really frustrating.
It's so frustrating. And I get some of those people, they care and their intentions truly are good. So I really can't knock them for that.
Exactly.
And we could have been doing this shit.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's of course smart, I think, to get other people's perspectives, especially family members, best friends, people that are in your, in your direct immediate family, teachers even sometimes, makes sense to get perspectives on a handful of people that have your best interest in their heart, but that doesn't mean that they're right. And it doesn't mean that they're horrifically wrong either. It's not like they're sending you down this path to get blown up in a landmine.
Right.
You just end up wasting a ton of time that will eventually do a big, enormous U-turn and bring you right back to where you started. And you're like, okay, well, I guess we'll get started now. Still the same person, still love the same stuff, still want to do the same things, still have the same dreams.
Yep.
Bummer.
And I mean, it's, I think about that, and I'm 28 and I'm just man, there's so many things I could have already been doing. I it is, some of this does feel like, all right, picking it up, starting from the beginning, years too late. But the other thing I'll say to that is, you know, age ain't nothing but a number. And even though that song was written in a really horrible context, even though I love Aaliyah, but R. Kelly is horrible, it's true. Just not what they were talking about.
No,
Dear God,
no.
never mind.
No. R.I.P. and send
And
that
you.
guy to where he belongs.
Just throw him off. Just, oh, God.
Yep. God. Well, that is fantastic advice. Couldn't agree more. Feel ya on so many levels. And that is something I've been talking a lot about on my podcast lately, is learning to trust your intuition, learning to trust yourself, like really like feel in your body, like what does this mean for me? How am I feeling about it literally in like the depths of my core? And like hear that, take that as answer, listen to the voices, hear the message, and just trust it. Okay, well, I just have one question for you, which is what I just ask all my guests. What does sisterhood mean to you?
Oh, man. This is the one question I probably actually should have thought about. But, you know, when I first like read that question, at first I was like, do I even know? Because like, I don't have sisters. And I was like, that's a cop-out, Chloe. You've got plenty. You just like, they're just not your blood sisters. And I think there's something to be said about the people we choose to be our family compared to the family that we have, because we got to take the time to get to know someone and really understand who they are and who they are to us, and decide actively, like, I'm going to bring you in, like, you're here and I know you got me and I always got you. And that is, to me, like, I mean, that's the crux of sisterhood, that backbone, that like everything else is falling apart. But like, when I think about like the women in my life, like, we have each other through and through, thick and thin, forever, always, no matter what, through the fire, through the rain, like through the zombie apocalypse. It's just, oh God. I mean, there are words that I can't even put to it, but there's something about being a woman to bond with other women. It's a beautiful ass thing. Mm-hmm. It's magic. And I mean, it's knowing like you can go places across the world and know that like there are people who are going to be there that have your back. I don't know. Sisterhood is it's a beautiful thing when you can find it, when you cultivate it, when we all treat each other like that, when we all really do have each other's back as women. That's some beautiful shit.
Hell yeah. I will drink to that.
Drinking to that. Hey. Oh, wine is so good. Oh my God.
So amazing. So amazing. This was such a fantastic conversation. I have to say, you have such a soothing voice. I think you should start a podcast.
It's so funny. I've never heard. No one has ever told me that before. I'm gonna like text my boyfriend and be like, somebody today told me that I have a soothing as fuck voice.
Yep.
So that needs to be a compliment you need to add to your repertoire.
Mm-hmm. It's very pleasant to the ear. So just log that somewhere and think about it down the line. Lots of projects, lots of future plans. You never know. Podcasting might be one of them.
Dude, I just want to like thank you. This was so great, and I love that you're doing this, and I appreciate being able to be in this space with you. Like, thank you so much.
Of course. I'm so happy you're here. This was an amazing conversation, and it's a conversation I've not yet had on this podcast, so I'm just so grateful that it exists and lives here now. And I know there are going to be lots of listeners out there that have been waiting for this and are really happy that it's here. And so just thank you so much. Super excited about it. Thank you.
Of course.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in to another episode of Mimosa Sisterhood podcast. Can you think of one person in your life that might really love this episode? Maybe this message will resonate with them very deeply, or maybe they just connect with Chloe and her life experience. If so, send them this podcast episode. You can text it to them, shoot it over via email, or even reshare our social media graphics with them on social media. Don't forget, guys, sharing is caring, and there's no better way for us to continue growing than when you lovely human beings share our podcast with all of your friends and your family. Also, I wanted to remind everybody that we have a podcast phone number, and there's so many ways that you can engage with us through this phone number. You can call and submit a Woman of the Week. Maybe there is an extra special woman in your life that you think deserves a little bit more recognition. You can also just call and say hello. Tell me who you are, where you're from, how you found the podcast, maybe one of your favorite episodes. I would really love to hear from you and to meet you. Or maybe you have a question. Are you somebody that aspires to become a podcaster? Are you currently working on launching your own business? Maybe you have drama with one of your best friends. Whatever it might be, feel free to call in, leave a voicemail, and I can feature it in one of my future episodes, and hopefully I can provide a little help and assistance with your matter. So lots of fun ways that you can engage with the show. If you are interested, please call 562-270-4914. That is 562-270-4914. All right, guys, that's it for me. I am sending you all the love, hugs, and bobs, and I hope you're all living your best life. Until next time, bye!